Over the past 24 hours, there were two major developments in the RICO case against President Trump over in the state of Georgia. Firstly, the judge overseeing the case, he went ahead and he dismissed several of the charges. And then secondly, that very same judge, he surprisingly gave an interview to a local radio station wherein he discussed the question of kicking Fani Willis off the case. Let's go through both of these developments together, starting with the dismissed charges. You see, what happened over in the Fulton County RICO case is that the lawyers for both President Trump, as well as for 5 of his co-defendants, they submitted a court filing asking the judge to throw out several of the charges. To be specific, this court filing was submitted by lawyers of President Trump, of Mark Meadows, of John Eastman, of Ray Smith, Robert Cheeley, as well as Rudy Giuliani. And their basic argument in this request was that the underlying facts in the case did not warrant those particular charges to be pursued. And after considering the rationale, well, just earlier today, the judge in the case agreed with their request and he dropped several of the charges in the case. Specifically, Judge Scott McAfee, who is of course the judge presiding over the case, he issued this 9-page ruling right here, striking down 6 of the charges that Fani Willis lobbied against Trump as well as his associates. Here was specifically what the judge wrote in his ruling. Quote, "The court's concern is less that the state has failed to allege sufficient conduct of the defendants. In fact, it has alleged in abundance. However, the lack of detail concerning an essential legal element is, in the undersigned's opinion, meaning the judge's opinion, fatal. As written, these 6 counts contain all the essential elements of the crimes, but fail to allege sufficient detail regarding the nature of their commission, i.e., the underlying felony solicited. They do not give the defendants enough information to prepare their defenses intelligently, as the defendants could have violated the constitutions and thus the statutes in dozens, if not hundreds, of distinct ways." And so with that, out of the 41 total charges in the Georgia indictment, the judge just dismissed 6 of them for being essentially legally defective. Basically, the prosecution was charging President Trump and his associates with asking state-level officials in Georgia to violate their oath to the state constitution, but the prosecutors failed to detail any specific constitutional provisions. It would be similar to me accusing someone of violating my constitutional rights, but when they ask me which rights, I just said all of them. Doesn't really work that way, and as such, the judge threw out 6 of the charges for basically not being specific enough. And for your general reference, these were the charges that were dismissed. Count number 2, count number 5, count number 6, count number 23, count number 28, and count number 38. All 6 of those counts were titled solicitation of violation of oath by public officer, and they all related to Trump and his associates calling up different state-level officials in Georgia to get them to either certify an alternative slate of electors or, as the indictment reads, to influence the certified election returns. All those charges have now been dismissed, including the ones which arose from President Trump's phone call with Mr. Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State. Now, out of these dismissed total 6 charges, 3 of them apply to President Trump himself. Quote, 3 of the quashed charges apply to President Trump and throw out counts related to a phone call he made to the Georgia Secretary of State. This leaves only the RICO charge for Mark Meadows, 10 counts for President Trump, 11 counts for Mr. Giuliani, 10 counts for Mr. Smith, 9 counts for Mr. Cheeley, and 8 counts for Mr. Eastman, which means in practical terms that only part of the case was dismissed. The case in its entirety is still unfolding, with the racketeering charges still being in place, at least for now, and it is only the charges of soliciting state officials which have been dismissed. And as you would imagine, Trump's legal team was actually quite satisfied with this victory. In fact, shortly after the judge's order was made public, Mr. Steve Sadow, who is the lead defense lawyer for Trump over in the state of Georgia, he released this as a part of his statement. Quote, "The counts dismissed against President Trump are 5, 28, and 38, which falsely claim that he solicited Georgia public officials to violate their oath of office. The ruling is a correct application of the law, as the prosecution failed to make specific allegations of any alleged wrongdoing on those counts. The entire prosecution of President Trump is political, constitutes election interference, and should be dismissed." And so that is the first major development. The second development in this case has to do with the fact that Judge Scott McAfee is actually up for election. And it is not an easy election by any stretch of the imagination. Specifically, here's the background. In December of 2022, Judge Christopher Brasher retired from the Fulton County Superior Court, leaving a vacancy. The Republican governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, he then appointed Judge Scott McAfee to replace him. That is how Judge McAfee became the judge in the first place. He wasn't elected by the people, but rather he was appointed by the Republican governor to fill a vacancy. And the reason that this matters is because Fulton County is overwhelmingly a Democrat stronghold. According to the official results, in 2020, Fulton County voted 73% for Joe Biden. And so, for Judge McAfee, who was appointed to the bench by a Republican governor and who himself was once the leader of his college's Republican chapter, well, the election in Fulton County is already an uphill battle. And coincidentally, in the 10 days since closing arguments were heard in the Fani Willis disqualification hearing, 2 challengers have stepped up to replace Judge McAfee in the upcoming election. Quote, "In the 10 days since closing arguments were heard, McAfee has received a pair of challengers in his May election bid. Candidates had until March 8th to qualify for the race, and McAfee saw 2 challengers into the race in the closing days. He will now face off against civil rights attorney Robert Petillo and Tiffany Johnson, a former senior staff attorney for the Fulton County Judge Melanie Lethbridge. While the election is nonpartisan, Petillo has previously run for other offices as a Democrat." And so, amidst this general backdrop, Judge Scott McAfee surprised quite a few people by doing an interview with a local radio station. The first question that was asked had to do with whether or not he believed that the challenger was actually being backed up by Fani Willis as essentially a form of retaliation. Here was the back and forth exchange. Quote, "Question: Do you feel that Petillo's run is being backed by Fani Willis, that this is a pressure campaign to force you to, and I'm doing air quotes, do the right thing or make the right decision? Do you feel that way?" And then Judge McAfee responds, "No. I think he seems sincere, so I'm not the type that I'm going to presume the worst of that sort. The biggest thing that I wanted to come on and make sure I told you today is that even if it is, it doesn't matter, because it absolutely is not going to play into my decision in any way." Then, the radio station asked Judge McAfee whether we can still expect a final decision by Friday in terms of whether or not Fani Willis will be disqualified from the case. And to that question, Judge McAfee had quite an interesting answer. Here was the full back and forth exchange on that question. Quote, "Question: Can you tell us, are you anywhere closer to that 2-week decision on the election interference? Are we closer to that? Are we sooner than 2 weeks or outside of 2 weeks? How are we looking?" Judge McAfee responds, "I gave myself a deadline because I knew everyone wanted an answer. And I'll tell you, an order like this takes time to write. There's a lot that I have to go through. And so, I'll emphasize this. I've had a rough draft and an outline before I ever heard a rumor that someone wanted to run for this position, so the result is not going to change because of politics. I'm calling it as best I can in the law as I understand it. So I still feel like I'm on track to having that done by the deadline that I put on myself." All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment. Listen, we currently are entering uncharted waters. Whether it's internationally or domestically, suspicious events are unfolding seemingly everywhere. I mean, every single day. Wars popping off, you have the internet and cell phone grid suddenly going dark, banks failing, you have the commercial real estate market about to collapse. And so I would recommend that you trust your gut, you take action, and you prepare for whatever might be coming down the pipe. And the best website to get prepared is preparewithroman.com. That's the website that My Patriot Supply made for me. Over there, you can load up on their 3-month emergency food kits that are packed with ready-hour foods. And the best part is on that special page, you'll save $200 off of each one. And these emergency food kits are awesome. They provide you with over 2,000 calories per day right when you need it the most, and they're sealed inside this super heavy-duty packaging. In fact, they can last for up to 25 years in storage. My Patriot Supply has free same-day shipping, and so if you order by 3 p.m., your order will be shipped out that very same day. And the shipping is real solid. The food kits arrive discreetly at your doorstep in unmarked boxes. And so join the over 3 million families that have already loaded up on My Patriot Supply's emergency food. Just head on over to preparewithroman.com and stock up on the food kits for your entire family. And the best part is that you can save $200 off of each one. I'll also throw the link. You can find it down in the description box below. And so, based on those comments, it looks like the decision has already been drafted and perhaps will be released to the public as early as later this week, meaning that we might know whether or not Fani Willis will be kicked off the case as early as tomorrow or Friday. And interestingly, the question of whether Fani Willis will be kicked off the prosecution or not in this case might actually become the determining factor in whether or not Judge McAfee is able to hold on to his job. Because one of the candidates running against him is specifically criticizing that aspect of the case. Specifically, while speaking to that same local radio station last Wednesday, here's what candidate for Judge Robert Petillo, here's what he said. Quote, "Robert Petillo, during an appearance on the Shelley Winter Show last Wednesday, called the hearing on the motion to disqualify Willis a clown show and implied it is not a well-run courtroom." And again, in a district that Joe Biden officially won by 73%, that's a fairly strong argument. However, On the flip side, it appears that Judge Scott McAfee is not going to let the potential prospect of losing his job, stop him from ruling in this case as he believes it should be ruled on. Here's specifically what he said on the matter in his interview with that very same radio station. Quote, "No job is worth my integrity. And, when you ask that question, what I think about it is, I've got 2 kids, 5 and 3. They're too young to have any idea of what's going on or what I do. But what I'm looking forward to one day is maybe they will grow up a little bit and they ask me about it. And I'm looking forward to looking them in the eye and telling them I played it straight and did the best I could." And so there you have it. Quite a few developments in the past 24 hours with a lot more to look forward to in the coming week. If you'd like to either listen to the full radio interview or if you'd like to read the full judge's order, I'll throw those links down into the description box below this video for you to check out, which I should mention is that same description box right below those like and subscribe buttons, both of which I hope you take a quick moment to smash so the YouTube algorithm will be quite literally forced to share this video out to ever more people. And then lastly, if you've ever wondered to yourself how deeply Chinese communists have infiltrated Hollywood, well, you're in luck. Because over on Epoch TV, we just published a phenomenal full-length documentary exposing exactly that question. Here's a trailer.
There's something magical about the movies that I just love.
Hollywood invented America to the world in the old days.
And as a medium, it's really powerful. But for some, that power isn't used for good.
Our way of life is being censored by the Chinese Communist Party.
They said, "We get a lot of our money out of China. Is there any way you could make this movie a little bit more attractive to the Chinese?"
Is it really just about money? Are there other parts at stake?
I had friends in Hollywood who said, "This will kill your career. You won't get funding." They're afraid of even mentioning one line.
Chinese influence was playing into what we see in U.S. films.
China said, "You can't have that in there." And Hollywood listened.
This is insane. This is a joke, right?
We raised our hand and we dove right into it. But over time, all of us have been punched in the nose.
The Chinese Communist Party followed no rules.
What's at stake? The soul of the nation is at stake.
We want indoctrination access to America. They could basically take over America without firing a shot because they control access to our minds.
And we all know that their goal is global domination.
People have been brainwashed without knowing it.
If you'd like to check out that awesome documentary in its glorious entirety, you can watch it over on Epoch TV, the no censorship video platform that I should mention is not controlled by the communists. The link to the film will be right there at the top of the description box below. You can just click on that link and it'll take you to Epoch TV where you can watch the film right away. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and most importantly, stay free.